Namo Om Vishnu Bhattaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Mati Bhakti Varanta Swanta Namani Namaste Sarasati Devi Gaura Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Hari Gaura Bhakta Vinita Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama. Okay, welcome everyone. Hare Krishna. One by
It'd
one.
be nice to see your face.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, not much to look at, but
Yeah, I'm funny. I'm jokey. But that,
there's the backdrop.
yeah,
Vrindavan.
with the
No, that's Hare Krishna.
backdrop Vrindavan, Madan Mohan temple there.
Yeah, always good to remind because I always like to. I should always have the video on. Sometimes I forget. So I think Mother Chandravalli, if you kept the marker where we left off last week, I think we're on page 594.
595.
595. Okay.
And the paragraph is,
Wow, got the exact paragraph.
it is rare samadhi, like the one before. They were she.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been discussing the last few chapters, the different levels of absorption, particularly in relationship to Nam Bhajan, which particularly for us means the chanting of Hare Krishna, different levels or different attainments. So now we're hearing about Samadhi, which is, you could say, the highest attainment of being absorbed in Krishna. And just to when it's speaking about Samadhi, it's not like, don't get the wrong picture, like someone is completely doesn't relate. In some cases that's the fact, but it's not necessarily meaning that someone is in complete samadhi 24 hours a day. They are lost to the world. That may be the case occasionally. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would exhibit different levels of absorption. Sometimes he would be externally conscious. Sometimes it would be half external and half internal. And sometimes it would be completely internal. And generally, he's completely being internal will be exhibited in the Gambhira at night time. But then when his devotees would visit or when he would interact with devotees, he would be conscious. Yeah. He would be exchanging with them, greeting them, embracing them, etc. So, point of making here that samadhi, don't get the picture someone is just doesn't know whether it's day or night, someone doesn't hear anyone. You know, sometimes there are devotees who exhibit that type of absorption. I think Gaur Govinda Maharaj was famously celebrated as, well, it's celebrated, but he was in a state of bhava, of ecstasy, where internally he was in his, you could say, philosophical speculation, but I think he was absorbed in his sarup and couldn't relate to the external world. You know, didn't even know practically what day of the week it was or what time it was. And he had one devotee we discussed who was looking after him. But here, someone may be in samadhi, and say a devotee may achieve this samadhi through his chanting of the Lord's holy name. But then he'd stop and eat prashadam. You understand? He'd take shower, you know, engage, do his duties, whatever it may be. But then he may go into. But there are examples here of yogis who literally go into this state of internal samadhi for thousands of years. So that's there as well. Anyway, so just we're going to hear some examples. So, Hare Krishna.
Can we say Markandeya Rishi was in kind of...
Yeah, Markandeya Rishi is a wonderful example of someone. I think we mentioned that. Yeah, we spoke about him
before, yeah,
last week. And Lord Shiva had to enter into his heart to tell him he was manifest before him. So deep. So that's a samadhi. Anyway, let's start reading. Hare Krishna. So I guess there's only two of us about the books. So
Nobody,
Anyone else has the book? No.
nobody's got
Okay.
it.
So you can go ahead, Mother Chandravali.
Yes, away.
Anyone else does have the book, and then you're quite welcome to read. Yes, go ahead.
All right. It is a rare samadhi revelation that enables a devotee like Krsna to see the Lord with his eyes. If Krishna appears to the sadhaka, he usually does so within their mind. Pipalayana gives the example of Lord Brahma as a devotee who saw the Lord within himself while in trance. Not only did Brahma see Krishna, but he saw Vaikuntha, who was greeted by the Lord with a handshake, and heard Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 essential verses. And although all this took place in his heart, Brahma's experience was one that gave the impression of seeing the Lord with his eyes and experiencing Vaikuntha through his senses. Such is the power of devotional samadhi. The Nav-Yogendra said, when the Lord expands his special mercy, one sees the Lord within by meditation as if directly with the eyes. This we can understand from what happened to lotus-born Brahma. Trance at the stage of aesthetic devotion is the goal of earnest sadhakas. Bilva Mangala Thakur is an example of a sadhaka at the advanced stage of power. In his Krishna Karnamrita, he reveals the trance of devotees in this formative stage of love for Krishna. The Thakur writes, when will the sweet flute sound of that youth who earlier appeared before me and who is said to be a great ocean of mercy appear again, displaying the full beauty of his joyful moon-like face, and thus destroy the agony of my mind and the misery of excuse me, misery of my lonely trance. This verse expresses the author's yearning for the enchanting modulation of Krishna's flute song to interrupt his samadhi meditation. Yet in his commentary, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami offers a more confidential purport, one that reflects Srimati Radharani's thoughts in her samadhi. When will the flute song of that youth who had appeared earlier and directed me to that grove for pastime finally appear carrying the wealth of his joyful moon-like face, and with that enchanting beauty destroy the intense pain of my mind? Pausing for a moment, Radha questions whether such good fortune is possible. She then answers her own doubt. After all, he is an ocean of mercy, and as such, he can certainly relieve my suffering. With the exception of Radha's samadhi, these are examples of the trance of great devotees at varying degrees of power. And since bhakti manifests in 5 different mellows, neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, and conjugality, the samadhi of devotees differs according to the mood that they adopt. A practitioner initiates the flow of his meditation, but when his trance gains spontaneous momentum, it is self-propelling. By contrast, the samadhi of Bhava Bhakta requires no effort. Indeed, sometimes it is only with great effort that such trance can be broken. Prahlad Maharaj explains to his teachers that he had no control over his devotion to Krishna. It was controlling him. O Brahmanas teaches, as iron attracted by a stone moves automatically towards the magnet, my consciousness, having been changed by his will, is attracted by Lord Vishnu, who carries a disc in his hand. Thus I have no independence.
Okay, perhaps pause there. Any say questions or any comments such elevated topic. It was difficult to formulate a question, but just to hear this wonderful attainment of devotees. Yes. Trying to understand more clearly the trance of Bilvamangala Thakur. And to know also that he's an example of a sadhaka. So he's not the stage of siddha. Interesting. He's practicing. He's practicing at the stage of bhava. Yeah? So in his Krishna-Kaumudi, he reveals the trance of devotees in this formative stage of love for Krishna. So that means because bhava is a ray of prema. So that's what it means by formative stage of love. Thakur writes, then there's a beautiful verse he describes. So this meditation, this means that these things have been revealed to him. So therefore he hankers for. Yeah, you read this in the Krishna Karanamrita, which I'm sure this verse is from. He describes Krishna in great detail. In a very intimate way, he describes Krishna. So that's Krishna who is revealing himself to Bilvamangala Thakur in his trance. Yep. So then he experiences Krishna, then he hankers for. Yep. So when it says, when will that sweet flute sound of that youth who earlier appeared before me? Okay. Also, he appeared in person to Bilvamangala Thakur, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful story. He did appear in person. Interesting, he was blind. So what he's describing, when he's describing the form of Krishna, we could say because he was externally, he couldn't see, he is seeing in his trance. Yeah, so quite interesting that revelation of Krishna is not dependent upon physical eyesight. He had no physical, he could not see, he was blind. But he could see Krishna in his trance. Yeah,
Prabhu,
yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
I have a question, Prabhu, just to stop you there.
Yes.
You did mention he is a sadhaka. So he is a sadhaka, and also even if you really see the meaning of Chaurashtikam, he the way he says
Doesn't sound like a sadhaka. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh my Lord.
How can we understand then he's a sadhaka?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. My Guru Maharaj actually mentions, that's why I brought it up. He does mention before that even he was taken aback by the description of Bilvamangala Thakur being a sadhaka. But he's not a sadhaka like you and me. He's a sadhaka. He's just entering into realms of revelation and devotion. So he's at the highest stages of bhava. So just remember that prema, if you just remember that prema is siddha, everything before that is preparing oneself to actually enter into Krishna's lila and pastimes with a specific form, with a specific relationship. So before that, the stage of bhava, things are becoming revealed. And then actually, I think it's only a full-blown prema. I think we mentioned this many times. This subject comes up a lot somehow now, bhava and prema. Bhava is like where you're like watching the pastimes, you're observing the pastimes. Yeah, through your trance. Like if you're going to a theater and you're watching the play or you're watching the film, you're watching it, the curtains are open, the doors are open, and things are being revealed. You are observing, so therefore you're experiencing all the emotions, but you're not actually situated within that. You're not actually part of the play, you're not film. But prema, you're part of the film. Yeah? You're actually part of the play. You have a specific role, and it's your eternal role. Yeah, it's your Stehi Baba. Yeah, so that's one difference between. That's why sometimes Baba is described as a stage prior to perfection. So it means it's it means Guru Mangala Thakur is sometimes described as a sadhaka, but he's not a sadhaka like you and me. Okay, let's be clear on that.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. This is nice explanation.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the verse, the author's yearning for the enchanting modulations of Krishna's flute song, which means he's heard it. So he's aspiring for that perfection. Yeah. And then, of course, as will be described, I think, in the next chapter, it is entitled Perfecting Trance. Maharaj speaks about Hada she experienced in her Samadhi. Now, she's a man, I think described in that chapter. Whether she is in trance or not, she is always in the trance or meditation on Krishna. Whether she's unconscious and she's in a stupor of ecstasy, of separation, and she falls to the ground, much to the perturbation and anxiety of her gopi friends. She becomes unconscious, and even when she's conscious, she is fully in trance, fully in samadhi of meditation on Krishna. Yeah, that's a whole nother level. Yeah. There is no existence outside of samadhi or trance for Radharani. Yeah. Whether she's, however she's functioning. Yeah, and we should read about that. Okay. Yeah, and I like this part as well, where we describe that no effort is required. Yeah, it is going on. It's a spontaneous momentum. It's self-propelling. What's it being propelled by? It's being by the deep rasa, or the deep taste. Like the point it came across that you have to make an effort an effort has to be made to break such a trance, to bring a devotee out of such a trance. An effort has to be made. Just like we have to make a great effort to enter into some type of meditation, isn't it? We have to make a great effort in our japa to stay concentrated, to put the thoughts of the demands of the day or the week or to one side and to concentrate on just the name. We have to make an effort. But here, devotees are so absorbed, they have to make an effort to come out of it. Yeah. And we hear stories like this, isn't it, of the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes they'll be in a swoon for 2 or 3 days, in their meditation. Okay. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, I can read on a bit more. Okay, when ecstatic devotion, so that's bhava, okay, fully blossoms into prema, the fully spiritual energy of the internal potency fuels the motor of a devotee's meditations. A samadhi which has no comparison to anything within this miserly creation. Right, so now we're going up another level. Samadhi. A well-known example of prema samadhi is that of Narada, when he was the son of a maidservant in a previous birth. Narada relates the events of his spiritual development as they took place in the service of some great devotees who passed the months of Chaturmasya near his home. After the death of his mother, even though just a boy, he took to the life of a mendicant and traveled the earth. Finally, in the depths of a jungle, beneath the shade of a great banyan tree, he took rest, and after purifying himself, entered a trance of meditation in which he came face to face with the Lord. The sage narrates. And the verse here, quote, after that, under the shadow of a banyan tree, in an uninhabited forest, I began to meditate upon the supersoul situated within using my intelligence as I had learned from the liberated souls. Yeah. So they gave him a specific sadhana, and it seems like it was a meditative sadhana. It doesn't mention here if there was japa. There might well have been, but they taught him, yeah, he had learned from liberated souls to meditate upon the super soul within using his intelligence. So he did that. And then, as we know, by following that regulative principle of devotion, now had first attained bhava, and thereafter prema. He was a Vaidhi Siddha. Vaidhi Siddha means he attained perfection through Vaidhi, through practice. Right? This is interesting because he didn't attain perfection through Raganuga sadhana. He attained perfection through his Vaidhi, yeah, following the instructions of the sages. He wasn't invoking meditating, he wasn't doing a Raganuga sadhana by meditating on Krishna's pastimes. He was meditating upon the super soul. Of course, his relationship with Krishna is not as the residents of Vrindavan. So he was a Vaidhi Siddha. Sitting beneath the tree, he followed the process taught to him by the Bhakti Vedantas. That means Vaidhi. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a mantra. It says, chanting a mantra which he was initiated and meditating on a Paramatma in love. Okay, so staying corrected. There was a mantra. I think, was it on the Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya? That was a mantra given to Dhruva. That was Dhruva's sadhana mantra. Yeah. Anyway, quote, another verse. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears poured from my eyes, and without delay, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So it wasn't Vishnu, it wasn't the super soul, it was Sri Krishna appeared on the lotus of my heart. Yeah. Unquote. Excuse me. As Narada's mind was flooded with love, the Lord progressively appeared within his senses, his nose, eyes, and ears. All right. How does the Lord appear within one's nose? His eyes, his ears, and his eyes. Yeah. Sometimes in this, because in a stage of ecstasy, the soul can, how can I describe it? The soul actually, the gates of the body is not a dependent factor on the ecstasy that they feel. You know, that makes sense. So in other words, they can taste Krishna through the eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes sense, like Krishna can eat with his eyes. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, yeah, Krishna can accept through his eyes. So we could say that the Krishna appeared through his nose. We might say it might be the scent of the Lord's body. Yeah, it's described here. Let's read on. First, Narada experienced the fragrance of the Lord's body. Yeah. So it's not just like he smells the guru. Oh, that's a nice smell. The fragrance of the body, just the fragrance of the Lord's body imbues a spontaneous meditation on Krishna's form. It is non-different. Yeah. So like, you know, like when we during after daily greetings, isn't it? Sometimes we get a swab of perfume. Yeah, but this is different. What Narada is saying, it's actually Krishna. As he smells the scent, his whole subtle body is becoming filled with emotions of affection and love for Krishna. He's not just, oh, that's a nice smell. Like, oh, Krishna smells nice today. It's not like that. You understand? You get the picture?
Yeah, I can kind of put it like materially kind of thing. Like say somebody wears certain type of perfume, and then that person's around and you smell a perfume, oh, then you remember that person.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. Then then the faults of the persons. They think the person, then the qualities, and then the times of.
So, like, you know, like this advanced devotees, I mean,
Yeah.
know what Krishna smells like. So, like, scent coming, you think.
Yeah.
Not
So just
body.
yeah, this is a wonderful story. So just remember, Narad's only 5 years old or something like this, and he's sitting in this forest. He's become tired from wandering. He's sat down and innocently he's just copied what the sages were doing in his innocence. You know, of course, he was purified by taking the remnants and serving them, and all this is happening. Yeah. First, now, next, the ears heard the Lord's approaching ankle bells, and finally he beheld the Lord's beautiful features, beginning with his face. So another verse describes that. O Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overwhelmed by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. Okay. So normally ecstasy is tasted within the heart, isn't it? The mind and the heart, we feel happiness. Here his whole body is affected by this ecstasy. His whole body is surging with this ecstasy. I could see neither myself nor the Lord. So, yeah. Unquote. Overwhelmed by symptoms of ecstasy, Narad fainted. Right. So he lost awareness of the Lord and, of course, of himself. Yeah, too much. That was too much for the gross body to stand. So he fainted away. When the boy returned to consciousness, he immediately wanted to invoke the previous vision. Of course, that would be an obvious thing he wanted to do. As thus undertook the same meditation, chanted the same mantra. So what happened next? You know the story? Navagaya, do you know the story?
No, I don't think I do.
Nava Jambavati, you know the story?
He's catching.
Nitai Mata, you know the story? Radhashyamu Sundari, no, you know the story? Rajagusha, you know the story?
No, Prabhu, I don't.
Oh, you don't. Radhashyamu doesn't. Mavala Vangalatika, you know what happened next? No, Chandravali, you know what happened next?
The Lord talks.
Yeah, actually, here. So he did the same thing. He tried the same meditation. So remember, he fainted. Now he's woken up, and now that same experience is gone. So he sat down. Okay, his probably tears are still. His face is still wet with tears, and his body's probably still feeling the ecstasy. But he tried as he might. Narad could not again invoke darshan of Krishna. He couldn't go. And he tried for hours. He didn't move from that spot. He tried for hours. Then the Lord, then he heard the voice of the Lord. And this is the part of the story which I was seeing if the devotees remember. He says, "Oh Narad, I regret that during this lifetime you will not be able to see me anymore." Yeah, so that must have been for a few seconds. I don't know how long that revelation was for, actually. Those who are incomplete in service and are not completely free from all material taints can hardly see me. So now it is called a cool yogi, a incomplete faulty yogi. Right, what was his fault?
He had some material desire.
Really? What was that material desire?
Yeah, he was attached to the mode of goodness being for it.
Yeah, you got it.
Living in this forest. And
he was attached to the forest.
Yeah, he was attached to the sanctity of the forest. Yeah, so yeah, he's kind of was a mixture of his, yeah, there was, so it wasn't fully, there was still something in his heart attached to something other than Krishna. We're continuing. It is fascinating that the Lord calls Narad a cool yogi, an incomplete faulty yogi. After all, he had reached perfection, prema. Interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So how is he incomplete? But the words avipakva and kashayanam mean immature and possessing material dirt respectively. And the voice continues to tell Narada that in this life he will not be able to see the Lord again. Why? Because the boy's ensuing fever of separation, his intense desire to see the Lord again, will cleanse his heart of all material desires. Rich Chayam. Yep. So that might happen. Not exact to the same degree, but a shadow of it happens in our chanting of japa, isn't it? Or we might have some wonderful experience in the kirtan or the association of devotees, which is quite overwhelming. Might even cause us to some degree become emotional, and thoughts of the Lord may come flood one's heart. But then 5 years, 5 years go by, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it may be, But you always remember that, and this is the idea: the Lord is fueling the fire of separation. Yeah, Krishna is not so easy to capture. Yeah, Krishna is gonna, yeah. So, but that hankering destroys material desires. Yeah, that envelopes the heart with a spiritual desire and floods out the material desires. Yeah, Krichayam. Okay. Any comments or questions? Chakravarti Thakur explains that Krishna's standard is to only show himself once to a devotee who has attained prema in a sadhaka body. Okay, so that's the deal. Once. The reason is that the initial stage of love is still immature, and maturing takes place in the Siddha Deha under the benevolent effect of intense separation. So Siddha Deha means one's spiritual form. That separation is made intense by a devotee longing after the division he once had as a sadhaka. And if there are any defects in the devotee's heart, they too are burned up in the fire of longing. So what was the contamination of Narada? So we've already mentioned that, but here's an explanation. Excuse me. Jiva Goswami explains that Narada had already declared that by relishing prema, he was free from passion and ignorance. The contamination that he had was of a sattvic nature, which the Acharya says was attachment to residence in a forest.
Mm-hmm.
What other impurities Narada may have had were not specified, but they too would have been in the same mode of goodness. Our readers should note that the impurity and impurities of a prema bhakta like Narad are not active, but dormant. In other words, the devotee is not actively combating the effect of such an attachment. Indeed, he's not even aware of it, and yet it remains lodged in the corner of his heart. To better understand Narad's attachment, we may refer to Jiva Goswami's description of 3 kinds of realized devotees. They are known as Prapta Bhagavat Prasada Deha, Nidutti Kashaya, and Mujjita Kashaya. Okay. Fortunately, there's an English translation of these. Quote, these are devotees who have eternal forms as Krishna's associates, devotees whose desires are completely washed away, and devotees whose material desires are inactive, respectively. So they're there, but they're inactive. Okay, let's just see what the next. All right. Chandra, like to read a bit more?
Yeah, I was thinking of that
Yeah.
verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Nasta Praishya, like 99% by studying Srimad Bhagavatam or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, 99% of you
Yeah,
purify,
that's a good
but
point.
there is
Yeah.
a slight, you still have slight that needs to go,
Yeah, that's described as almost completely destroyed.
almost complete, yes.
Almost. So that's the distinction between. So that's the stage of nishta, where one is fixed, but still there's some impurities in the heart. So that's a good comparison. So it seems like even at the stage of here, prema,
Yeah, but
it's still
like,
there, but it doesn't. Just like at the stage of nishta, the impurities do not stop one from performing devotional service. They're just there. They just cloud things a bit.
Mm.
So even, yeah, very good correlation, even so the same is happening at the stage of here, at this stage, but the Marge mentions that the devotee is not really aware of it. It's not like it is dormant, yeah, which will be quite quickly washed away. Yeah, sorry, Mother, I cut you off there.
no, that's why that was another thing, like there is 4 stages of prema. So then you would advance through all these things,
Yeah, yeah.
Even the slight thing that you don't know is there, but it will like go as you advance through prema stages.
Yes. And then when you're completely, then only, God, imagine how elevated these souls are who actually are associating directly with Krishna.
Yeah.
That's like Sukadeva Goswami in his ecstasy or appreciation. He says, how fortunate are these cowherd boys to actually play with Krishna? They must have performed heaps and heaps of pious activities. After he's describing the cowherd in boys and how they would play with Krishna, wrestle with him and imitate the animals and the frogs, etc., jumping on off trees and jumping in the water, etc. He was how many pious activities these great souls do to get this opportunity.
But then aren't we supposed to give up pious activities as well?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That this comment. Well, this is not mundane pious activities. This is activities in relationship to the performance of devotional service. So he calls. So in his ecstasy, what is it they did? So we can understand that that position is not given to one if they've been materially charitable.
Yeah.
No, it's spiritual piety, bhakti or mukhishukriti. Okay, you can read a bit more.
Okay. Example of these is Narad when he attained his eternal form, Sukadeva Goswami and Narad as a sadhaka in his previous life when harboring the dormant desire to reside in solitude. Bharat Maharaj is also an example of Murchita Kashaya. His kingly propensity to give shelter to others remained in him and surfaced as the protector of a dear form. Ah, that's good, yes.
So we have to. So we does anyone like to be in solitude sometimes? Yes.
Yes, but I've realized it as well that
I think it's all there, especially if our lives are quite active on the social scene, which often our society is, isn't it? Temples, there's hundreds of people, and festivals, there's this and that. Sometimes it's right. So look out, it was a contamination for Narada, Yeah, you could say more than that. I guess devotees in solitude so they can do bhajan. Hare Krishna. You can
But then
continue.
isn't that example when one devotee wanted to just go away and chant, just chant, 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 and
Yeah.
then somewhere Prabhupada said, yeah, okay, go and do it. And after a while, he fell really.
Yeah, I think Prabhupada gave one devotee Babaji initiation.
Yeah.
There's different, I think there's a couple of examples. One where one devotee, he was diagnosed with a terminal disease. So he was inspired just to chant 64 rounds a day or whatever. So Prabhupada gave him Babaji initiation.
Mm.
But then it was, then it was found out that he didn't actually, the doctors, I suppose it was good news in one sense, materially speaking, they had told him actually it's not a terminal disease. But then he left actually, and he took up surfing again.
Yes.
Another example, one devotee was living in a tree and chanting, and devotees were complaining to Prabhupada. But then eventually this devotee left, and went back to material life. So yeah. Yeah, okay, carry on.
In the paragraphs above, we have shown the samadhi of devotees on the threshold of prema. Vyasadeva is the example of a devotee whose prema is mature. Srila Jiva Goswami cites the following verses as indicative of Vyasa's trance of love. Oh Vyasadeva, your vision is completely perfect. Your good fame is spotless. You are firm in vow and situated in truthfulness. And thus you can think of the pastimes of Lord in trance for the liberation of the people in general from all material bondage. In this verse, Narad is requesting his disciple to enter samadhi in which he can see the pastimes of Krishna so that he can later describe them. After Narada's departure, Vyas made the most of this blessing and entered into the trance of love, which is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. One may ask, what did he see in trance? The obvious answer is, Vyas transcribed the contents of his samadhi in Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus, the contents of Srimad Bhagavatam are the vision of Vyas.
Yeah, that's for your interest. If you want to look at that, that's in first canto, chapter 7, the son of Drona punished. It's quite an important set of verses, which establishes the what is it established? Yeah, it establishes, well, the trance is a trance of prema. It's a trance of bhakti, and describes what he sees. I don't know if it's going to be mentioned here in detail, but he sees Krishna, he sees external energy, he sees everything. And then, based on that revelation, he then compiles, manifests the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why it's considered important in verses. So chapter 7, canto 1. Okay, continue.
In Tattva Sandarbha, Srila Jiva analyzes Vyasadev's trance in detail. He does so to show that Vyasa's samadhi is a product of mature prema, a prema that revealed the original personality of Godhead, Krishna, in the company of his full potencies. It is important to show that Vyasa was mature in realization for two reasons. First, the ultimate teaching of Srimad Bhagavatam is how to attain prema through the practice of sadhana bhakti. This is conveyed in verses like, my dear Maharaj Yudhishthir, the Supreme Person of Godhead Krishna is always ready to help you. He is your master, guru, God, very dear friend, and head of your family. Yet sometimes he agrees to act as your servant or order carrier. You are greatly fortunate because this relationship is possible only by Bhakti Yoga. The Lord can give liberation, mukti, very easily, but he does not very easily give one Bhakti Yoga because by that process he is bound to the devotee. Acharyas all agree that the word Bhakti Yoga is in the verse referred to prema, Srila Prabhupada writes in this regard, Krishna readily grants liberation, but does not very readily grant perfection in devotional service. Perfection in devotional service means love of Godhead. To properly transmit the truth of Prema Bhakti, the author himself must be fully experienced in the same. The second reason Vyasa's attainment is important is because he's the teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam's teacher, to explain the truth of Bhakti to their perfection. Srila Sukha must also be experienced in Prema, and that is only possible if his teacher is similarly spiritually perfected. One can only give what one has. In conclusion, we must admit that Vyasa's trance transpired through his mature expression of love for Krishna. After all, scriptures note that the sage Apantara, oh, I can't say that.
Yeah.
Apantara
Atma.
Sama became Dvaipana Vyas. Okay. Some say he's an empowered giver and a Vaishya avatar, while others that he is Vishnu Tattva, an Amsa avatar. Srila Prabhupada's opinion for the former. In either case, it is clear that his spiritual identity eminently qualifies him for the samadhi of love. We have gone to, oh, little one's crying. We have gone to some length to explain Vyasa's trance of prema, to show the importance that that kind of samadhi plays in the composition of our most authoritative scripture, and hence in the subject matter that it presents. By experiencing prem, one can teach it and transmit it. Bhaktya sanjayata bhaktya. Bhakti begets bhakti. We did that before.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Any questions about that? So, Bhagavatam is a love book manifested from the prema, the realization coming from Srila Vyasadeva. Yeah. So one can only give what one has. Okay.
And he had everything, Vyasadeva, because in
Yeah.
trance, he saw everything.
Does anyone know Vyasadeva's actual original? Does he have an original relationship with Krishna, like a Sarup form?
I haven't
I
like,
can't remember reading about such a.
no. Mm.
He's definitely a yeah. I think he speculating here. I think he might be similar to Arjuna, that he plays this role of. At least there's different Vyasadevas, isn't it? That makes things more complicated. Vyasadeva is a post, the seat of Vyas. Then different jivas will occupy that seat. Yeah, but this particular Vyas had love, had prema. But I've not heard it. I can't remember reading any description of his actual spiritual identity, which tends to me, which makes me think that he's might be like Arjuna. Yeah. Revealing that Bhagavatam is being revealed through him in different places in the universe. But that's a philosophical speculation. Excuse me. All right. We've got 9 minutes left. Let me read a bit. Finally, we show an example of samadhi as experienced. Oh, here we are. Here we go. Hold on to your seats. We're going to hear the samadhi experienced by Krishna's personal associates, the gopis. All right. In his instruction to Uddhava, the Lord remembers the young damsels of Raj and describes their samadhi of absorption in him. With great feeling, Krishna said, quote, "My dear Uddhava, just as great sages in yoga trance merge into self-realization, like rivers merging into the ocean, and thus are not aware of material names and forms, similarly, the gopis of Vrindavan were so completely attached to me within their minds that they could not think of their own bodies or of this world or of their future lives. Their entire consciousness was simply bound up in me, unquote. The gopis experienced this state of trance both in Krishna's presence and in his absence. Whether they were separated from their beloved and meditated on their pastimes with him, or whether they were actually dancing with him beneath a moonlit sky, their absorption surpassed the samadhi of the greatest yogi that I mentioned in the beginning, Radharani. Yeah? The reader may immediately appreciate how intensely the gopis were absorbed in Krishna. Even when Krishna was in faraway Dwarka, they were just as engrossed in meditating on the rasa dance as when they were actually with him in Braj, singing, dancing, and embracing. For the gopis, there was no difference between sitting still or dancing, keeping silent or singing, alone or among millions of others. They were all parts of the same trance, and that trance was powered by an extraordinary kind of love known only to them, called Adiruddha Mahabhav. That's why Lord Chaitanya, there's a verse, I would like to learn it one day, but it's an important verse that Lord, he glorifies the Bhagavatam as being the topmost scripture, then he glorifies the gopis as being the topmost example of devotees. Yeah. So Lord Chaitanya was very much appreciated, obviously, considering his Radha Bhava Jyoti Suvalidam Nome Krishna Sarupam, combined form internally, Radha. Okay. So Adiruddha Mahabhav.
So all gopis had that bhav?
Let's read on. She has it to the topmost degree, Mahabhav. Yeah, I think it's actually Radharani. I remember Gogaruni Maharaj would speak in great ecstasy. You go and describe it. Adiruddha Mahabhav. Describing Radharani. Yeah. Let's read on. In the few minutes we have, we might see. When separated from Krishna, continuous thought of him so absorbed the gopis' attention that they forgot who they were or where they were. Yeah, sorry for keep interjecting. I remember my Guru Maharaj's book, sometimes he describes how the gopis, they were so absorbed in Krishna. Now they're supposed to churn milk to get butter, but they would be so entranced that they would churn water and not realize it was water. Or sometimes they would go to fetch something within the courtyard, but then they would forget and they would just keep walking and walking and walking out of the courtyard and walk into the forest. Of course, and their relatives and etc. were very concerned, and they concluded that these girls are haunted by ghosts. Like that. They remembered only pastimes with him, and that remembrance was so intense that they thought they were actually with him. Right? So intense that they were thought that they experienced Krishna's presence, relishing his association and the bliss of the rasa dance. Similarly, when the gopis were actually with Krishna, they forgot where they were and where they had come from. Their minds so captivated by Krishna that they were not even sure that they were actually with him. Oh, amazing, isn't it? They thought, surely this is too good to be true. I must be dreaming it all. In other words, the gopis' existence, their constant consciousness, was so much bound up in Krishna that they could not tell whether they were in his manifest or unmanifest pastimes, whether they were dreaming or awake, whether their experience was real or just meditation. This is amazing, isn't it? Compared to the trance of Markandeya Rishi and all the others we were just been describing. In the pastime of, sorry?
It's okay. I was going to give you an example today, but anyway. I heard about when Krishna came as a messenger, and then Duryodhana prepared everything No, but he goes to Vidu's house. And when he knocks, he comes in. And Vidu's wife, she just had a bath, so she wasn't properly dressed. But when she came in, she could smell Krishna and feel, and in her, like, in her absorption. I mean, remember peeling the banana, giving the skin,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that,
yeah.
you know, it's like, you don't know what you're doing till Vidu
Yeah,
comes.
yeah.
He says, "Oh, mad woman, what are you doing? What did you give that to Krishna?"
Yeah, she didn't even know. Yeah, that's
Now
a
she
one
was
thing.
confused
Examples often
that
brought
she
up in
wasn't
class.
dressed properly as well, you know. When she came out of that samadhi trance, then she realized, oh no, I'm even dressed properly.
Mhm.
I was listening to that today, and yeah, this reminded me.
Now, we've only got one page, two and a half pages to read for this
Oh, can
chapter.
we?
So we're might go over a couple of minutes. I really hope that's okay with everyone. But let's try and read more than speak. Try to. In the pastime of dancing in Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited the same samadhi, taking the role of Srimati Radharani. He conversed with Lord Jagannath in an attempt to bring the Lord back to Vrindavan. During that exchange, Jagannath spoke of the gopis' ecstasy of separation and disclosed its special power. Quote, "Our loving affairs are more powerful because of my good fortune in receiving Narayan's grace. This allows me to come there unseen by others. I hope that very soon I'll be visible to everyone." Unquote. Here and elsewhere, Krishna admits that the samadhi of Radha and the gopis is so powerful that it forcibly brings Krishna from Dwarka to Vrindavan, makes him a living part of their meditation, and facilitates real life exchanges. Despite that, the gopis continue to think that their pastime with Krishna is a dream. This is the super excellence of the samadhi. It is second to none. So in one sense, it is a dream, but in another sense, it's not, because Krishna's actually coming. But they think they're dreaming. So every night there's rasa, despite Krishna being in Dwarka, but they think it's just a dream. So they don't know whether they're dreaming or not. And the second to none. Although the gopis' samadhi is compared to that of great sages, the analogy is merely a limited indication. In the way of Shaka Chandranaya, showing the moon by pointing out the branches of a tree. All right, so there's no way you can describe it. The best you can describe it is by, okay, let's speak about the yogi samadhi, but that doesn't do justification to the gopi samadhi. Yeah, just like if, okay, where's the moon? Where's the moon? Well, look at the tree. Okay, now look through the branches. There's the moon. Yeah. Shaka Chandranaya. That is. Great sages have no attraction to Krishna, and neither has he any for them. On the other hand, the gopis are so fully given themselves to Krishna that they feel that even giving himself to them, still he remains in their debt. You know that verse. Parioham. Not parioham. The analogy is valid in the sense that just as the minds of yogis attain oneness with the object of their meditation, the gopis' minds attain a superlative oneness with their meditation on Krishna. We may add that the gopis spoken of above were of two kinds. Some, like Radha and Lalita, were Krishna's eternal associates, while many, many others were pure devotees who became qualified for the Lord's company as sadhana siddhas through association with Nitya Siddha Gopis. There are many examples of a trance experienced by Krishna's eternal associates. Yes, so everyone here, we're all way, 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 way down the line, but we are hoping to attain this similar type of perfection. Yeah. Become qualified. Yeah. There are many examples of the trance experienced by Krishna's eternal associates, and they are relevant to our study of sadhana, Sankalpa. Very much so. Are they relevant? A couple more paragraphs. Determinations have goals as their aspiration, and the devotion of the gopis described by Krishna is the Raj aspiration of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. In his purport to the verse above, Srila Prabhupada explains that a sadhaka's sincere aspiration ends in such a wonderful attainment. Because of its relevance, we quote the purport in its entirety. In this quote, Krishna has two kinds of presence, prakata and aprakata, manifest and unmanifest. These are identical for the sincere devotee. Even if Krishna is not physically present, the devotee's constant absorption in the affairs of Krishna makes him always present. This is confirmed in Brahma Samhita. Then there's a quote we know, Prema Jnana Churati Bhakti Vilochanena. Due to this intense love, the pure devotee always sees Lord Krishna present within his heart. All glories to Govinda, the primeval personality of Godhead. When Krishna is not manifest before the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they always absorb the thoughts of him. Therefore, even though at the time Krishna was living in Dwarka, he was simultaneously present before all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. That's why it said Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So if you get asked this question to explain it, so this is how you're going to explain it. Try to explain it. Yeah, the samadhi and absorption of the gopis calls Krishna, but they think it's a dream. So he never leaves Vrindavan. This was aprakat presence. Devotees who are always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna will soon see Krishna face to face without a doubt. In other words, devotees who are always engaged in Krishna consciousness and are fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna certainly return home back to Godhead. Then they see Krishna directly, face to face, talk with him, and enjoy his company. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4:9. Quote, because during his lifetime a pure devotee is always speaking of Krishna and engaging in his service, as soon as he gives up his body, he immediately returns to Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna is personally present. He then meets Krishna directly. This is successful human life. This is the meaning of Prakateha Anivi Shatvara. The pure devotee will soon see the personal manifestation of Lord Krishna. And I promise, now it's the last paragraph, few sentences. Of course, there are varieties of trance that are unique to Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, and Radha. Samadhis no other living entity can exhibit. Many of these, along with their symptoms of ecstasy, are described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. They are recorded for us to encourage us to strive for the kind of samadhi for which we as sadhakas and later as siddhas are eligible for. To progress in the realm of sankalpas, the goal must always be in sight. Having extensively discussed different kinds of samadhi, we will now return to the trance of the sadhaka and describe the characteristics in the following chapter. Okay, Hari Om, that's it. Hari Krishna. So thank you. Next chapter is entitled Perfecting Trance. So we go, all right, so we'll look at that from the sadhaka's point of view. Okay, thank you everyone. I hope you enjoyed that reading and hearing about that. This will give us some idea of what we want to achieve in our devotional practices at some distant point in the future. Hare Krishna. So please join us if you can tomorrow for Bhagavad Gita. We're having a nice discussion on that on the fifth chapter. So please join us if you're so inclined or you have time. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu ki
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram.